Hello, welcome into another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Collar along with Sam Ekstrom here. A reminder to listen to our full podcast on Purple Insider, wherever you get your podcasts, or in the link below. And go to purpleinsider.substack.com and make sure you sign up and subscribe there. Sam, the Vikings have signed Patrick Peterson to a one-year, $10 million deal. Was this a smart move for the Vikings?
Did they get 2016 Patrick Peterson or 2020 Patrick Peterson? Because I think there's a difference between the players. This was a legend, 8-time Pro Bowler. 2 years straight, though, he's fallen off. And falling off a pretty sizable amount in 2020. If you look at the analytics, he was below average coverage grade of cornerbacks with 20% or more of snaps, 90th out of 136. And he led the league in penalties last year. All players. 14 penalties. So that tells me there's serious decline happening. Does it mean he can't pull a Xavier Rhodes and play better in a new scenario with some different coverages? No, he can bounce back. That's possible. Will he be a good influence in the secondary? Yes, he will be. But we had this same conversation with Tomlinson. Even if you like the player, and in this case, I'm less convinced that I do, it's still a lot of money and fails to address really any needs you have on offense or your defensive line from a pass rushing standpoint. So I have questions. I have skepticism. Talk me off the ledge or don't, or double down.
I think that your skepticism is fair here, and the price tag, 1 year, $10 million, it leaves them without a whole lot of long-term risk, but the short-term risk is you put $10 million into one position when your salary cap situation is still very tight, and you're having to move around all sorts of money and restructure deals in order to create space to sign anyone, and now you're putting a lot of it, a very high percentage into it, one 31-year-old player. Now, there is some precedent for players of his age and his caliber background for extending their careers into their 30s at the cornerback position. We saw that from Terrence Newman, and Patrick Peterson is a far more accomplished player than Newman was at this point in their careers. But we're also talking about the age where players start to fall off a little bit. And we saw that from his numbers last season, that the last 2 years, he's allowed quarterback ratings on throws into his coverage over 100, where he had never done that before in his career. You mentioned the penalty issue. And my question is, now, how do you fix other things that are of pretty dire need? I mean, the pass rush could be helped if Danielle Hunter comes back and everything's fine, but the offensive guard position right now is so much in flux that out of 5 potential spots, you really only have one guy that you are very certain is a really good player in Brian O'Neill, and the rest of it is all up in the air. And now a very, very big chunk of your money is gone for a player that carries some risk. Patrick Peterson's high end is extremely high. He can be great, and we know that Mike Zimmer has about as good of an eye for cornerbacks as anybody out there. It's just, if this one goes bust, that's going to make things very difficult on you, especially from a depth perspective. And we still don't really know whether Cam Dantzler is going to be able to play healthy for a full season, if Mike Hughes could stay healthy. Now it appears Jeff Gladney will move to an inside corner spot where he played only a little bit last year, and he's going to be asked to probably play the whole season at the inside corner spot. So how's that going to work out? I think this offers a lot of other questions that need to be answered before we really have the full picture here.
Yeah, it is history repeating itself in some way. You look at last year, they spent a lot of money on Michael Pierce, Anthony Harris. They gave the franchise tag. They made cap space to bring in Yannick Ngakoue, trying to get that defense right. Meanwhile, they voluntarily released a productive offensive lineman in Josh Klein. They did the same thing here with Riley Reif, and they haven't taken meaningful steps to address that spot. So does this team really think that they're fine on offense because they were 4th in yards last year? Let's be real. They were 11th in points. They were like 14th in points per drive. They were middle of the pack to above average, but they weren't top 5 in my eyes, like I think they want to tell themselves. They still need to give that side of the ball some attention. And the pass rushing is still a mystery to me. Danielle Hunter, probably better than 50% chance he returns with that contract dispute, but we don't know for sure. They let Afadio Denebo walk for $2.5 million to the New York Giants. So the pass rushing is an issue. The safety spot, still an issue. Cornerback, I guess they've resolved for now, but they've poured so many resources into the defensive side. And they haven't left themselves a lot of room to go bargain hunting and try to pick up some of these valuable veterans that I'm convinced are going to fall through the cracks, because there are some pretty big names out there still, whether it's wide receiver, whether it's offensive line, who are not signed. The money's beginning to dry up, and there are going to be opportunities out there, but the Vikings haven't been very patient.
Well, and that's what I wonder about, and I'm very curious to see in the free agent market is, do we see a lot of great deals signed at the end of free agency or right before the season in August or late July like we did last year? I think a lot of teams got great deals on guys who were just desperate to find a job, and they ended up really paying out. With this one, in order to be worth $10 million, Patrick Peterson has to play really, really well. If you sign a player for $2.5 million, like say Justin Coleman signed with the Miami Dolphins, if he is only okay and not the best version of Justin Coleman, well, then you didn't really spend that much on him. And if he is the best version, then you hit a home run. Here, you have to hit a home run or the move wasn't really worth it. And that's where that high risk kind of comes into play. But what they do after that, can you find guards still that you would have targeted before? Can you find another playmaker on your offense? They also lost a running back in Mike Boone, who's not a huge part of their offense, but was a depth player. And we saw last year that when they took risks with the depth and there were some injuries, that it really ended up biting them. And putting so much into one player means that it could come back to bite you if this one signing doesn't work out. The other thing I would say, Sam, is this, to me, takes the dial of pressure on Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman and it cranks it up, because it says, all right, you guys really believe you're going to be good. I think they can be with this move and they can improve the defense. But now the bar is you have to be, because you made moves to be.
Yeah, they're saying we are going to contend. They did this last year and it didn't work out. And part of the reason why, again, last year is because they didn't bring in many free agents. They kind of spent the money all at once. They had a gigantic draft class. And then what happened? They blamed a lot of their struggles on playing so many young players. Well, are they counting on drafting rookies again to fill some of the spots? Because that feels like that's going to be a repetition of what happened in 2020. If they think they're going to get meaningful contributions from rookies, well, even if you get high picks like they had with Cam Dantzler and Jeff Gladney and Ezra Cleveland, plenty of growing pains that can go on there. They hit a home run with Justin Jefferson. I'll give them that. But even if you take guys high and you think you can plug them in week one, you're still going to have to go through the tumult of like getting them ready to play in the NFL. So again, they're not going to bring in a lot of free agent bodies here, which makes me think they're counting on themselves to draft really well this season.
Sam, a fascinating offseason already with two big moves made by the Vikings, pushing the chips to the middle of the table here on next season. Make sure that you subscribe to the Purple Insider podcast. You can use the link below or wherever you get your podcasts, purpleinsider.substack.com, and hit the subscribe button here on YouTube so you get all of these Purple Insider extras.